I wish Beatrice's children were my only grandchildren, my mom said in front of my 9-year-old daughter. Rosa ran off to the hallway crying. I didn't cry. I had already cried enough because of them. That very week, they started noticing everything I did for them. You'd think the family would behave better at a birthday party? Sorry. In mine, it only brought out what they had always wanted to say. It was my mom's birthday, and we were all gathered at my parents' house in Lyon. The table had rice, mole, salad, soda, and a 3-milk cake. Nothing fancy, but prepared to pretend we were a close-knit family. There was Beatrice, my sister, and her husband Ernesto, sitting as guests of honor. With them were their 3 children, Carlos, Gabriela, and Mia, the perfect grandchildren. Carlos, the one who recited poems, Gabriela, the one who played the keyboard. Mia, the girl who, according to my mom, sang like a little angel since she learned to speak. And then there were us, me, Mónica, the complicated daughter, the one who arrived too soon, the one who never quite fit in, the one who only had one daughter. Rosa was sitting on the edge of the sofa, swinging her feet, without touching the floor, clutching a card she had made for her grandmother. It was a folded piece of construction paper, with a red heart and some crooked flowers. She had spent hours making it. I told her it was perfect, and I meant it. After singing Las Mañanitas and cutting the cake, my mom, as always, wanted to turn the gathering into a competition. Let the children do something nice for their grandmother, she said, with that smile she used when she already knew who was going to shine. I felt Rosa tense up beside me. First Carlos went up, stood up straight, and recited a poem that sounded too elaborate for a 10-year-old, but nobody said anything. My dad applauded as if he were watching a famous writer. Then Gabriela played on the living room keyboard, confident, rehearsed, without a note out of place. Afterwards, Mia sang a short song. My mom almost melted. Oh, my beautiful girl, she said, what a voice you have. Beatrice smiled, feigning modesty, as if she hadn't been waiting for that moment all afternoon. Then it was Rosa's turn. My daughter has always been shy. She doesn't like speaking in front of many people. She feels safer with a pencil in her hand than with everyone looking at her, living at her. But that afternoon she wanted to try. She wanted to give her grandmother something. She wanted to feel part of the family. She stood up slowly, with the card still in her hand. She looked at me. I nodded to encourage her. You can do it, I said quietly. Rosa started singing another part of the Mañanitas. Her voice came out shaky. On the second line she made a mistake. Her face turned red. I tried to smile at her, to tell her with my eyes that it was okay, but she was looking at the faces. Carlos looked down to hide a laugh. Gabriela turned toward her mom with that look of superiority that children learn all too quickly. Mia covered her mouth. Rosa tried to continue, but her voice seized up. She fell silent in the middle of it. There was an awkward silence, and some soft obligatory applause, the kind that hurts more than the silence. Rosa sat back down, squeezing her card with her fingers. Her eyes were full of tears, but she was holding them back. Then Carlos raised his hand. Grandma, can I say another poem? My mom lit up. Of course, my love. And Carlos started again. Now more confident, more theatrical. When he finished, the room filled with applause again. That was when my mom said it. She laughed, looking at Beatrice's children, and let it out, as if it were nothing. How I wish Beatrice's children were my only grandchildren. No one laughed. The room went cold. My dad didn't correct her. On the contrary, he nodded with a tight smile, as if he agreed, but didn't want to say it out loud. Beatrice gave a strange, uncomfortable smile. Yes, but she said nothing. No one said anything. The only one who reacted was Rosa. My daughter lifted her head, looked at her grandmother, then looked at me, and the tears she had been holding back spilled out all at once. She stood up from the chair and ran out down the hallway. The chair scraped against the floor. The card crumpled in her hands, and still no one moved. I stood up. My heart was beating so hard, I felt nauseous. It wasn't just anger. Everything I had swallowed since I was a child came rushing back. "Monica," my mom said, with that annoyed tone I knew by heart. "Please, don't make a scene." It was a joke. A joke. I didn't answer because I didn't trust my own voice. I walked down the hall and found Rosa sitting on the floor by the bathroom door, hugging her knees. She had the card pressed against her chest. Her cheeks were red and wet and wet. Her little body was trembling. I knelt in front of her. "Let's go," I told her. She looked at me, heartbroken. "Mom, Grandma doesn't love me." I felt something inside me break. "We aren't staying here," I told her, trying not to crumble. "Grab your things." I picked her up, hugged her, and we left. We walked past the living room without saying a single word. Beatrice's children were very still. My dad was staring at the table. Beatrice didn't know what to do with her hands. My mom stayed seated, annoyed that I didn't accept her cruelty like it was a joke. No one stopped us. Outside, the sun was already setting, and the air felt cool. Rosa held my hand so tightly my fingers hurt, but I didn't let go. We walked to the car. I sat her in the back seat, buckled her in, and she curled up by the window. On the way back, with the streets quieter, she didn't speak. Neither did I. What do you tell a child when her own grandmother just made her feel unwanted? I couldn't tell her she didn't mean it, because she did. I couldn't tell her it didn't matter, because of course it mattered. When we got home, she put on her pajamas without saying anything, and sat on the bed with her sketchbook. After a while, she looked up. "Why did Grandma say that?" I sat down beside her. "Because she was cruel," I told her. "And because sometimes adults say things they have no right to say." But it seemed like she really meant it. I took a deep breath. I didn't want to lie to her, but I didn't want to leave her alone with that wound either. "What she thinks doesn't decide what you're worth," I told her. "You are my daughter. You are the most important thing I have. And no one in that family is ever going to make you feel less than again while I'm around." Rosa looked down. I felt sorry for her. "They should be the ones feeling sorry," I told her. "Not you." It wasn't a pretty speech, it was just the only true thing that came out. That night, when she finally fell asleep, I opened my laptop on the kitchen table. The house was silent. I logged into my banking app. There was the scheduled transfer I made every month to my parents. 6,000 pesos a month, for years. Help for the mortgage, they said. The least a grateful daughter could do. I hit cancel. The bank asked me to confirm. I confirmed. Then I opened the family group chat. The one that always pinged when my parents needed something, but rarely when I was struggling. I wrote a single message. "Don't ever ask me for money or legal help again. Hire your own lawyer." I sent it and turned off my phone. By the next morning, I already had missed calls. First my mom, then my dad. Then Beatrice, I didn't answer. By noon, the messages arrived. My mom wrote, "When you're over your tantrum, we'll talk." My dad sent, "Don't do things you might regret later." I didn't reply. In the afternoon, the tone changed. My mom, "We need to renew some business permits. You know where the documents are. You just have to send them." My dad, "Monica, don't play around with this. It's important." Beatrice, "Hi, sister. Can you help my parents with a quick errand? Don't be like that. Don't be like that." As if the problem were my reaction, not the phrase that had made my daughter cry. I placed the phone face down. My parents had never understood everything I did for them or them. My help was taken for granted, as if I had been born with the obligation to solve their lives. That day I didn't just take Rosa out of that house. I also stopped staying there myself. My parents were 18 years old when I was born. They were just learning to be adults when the diapers, the bills, and the sleepless nights arrived. They didn't say it like that, but they made me feel it my whole life. "Because of you, I couldn't keep studying," my mom would say, laughing. "You changed all our plans," my dad would say. "You turned out so expensive." I always said it as a joke, but a child understands more than adults believe. I understood that I had arrived ahead of time, that I had been a burden, that having been born meant I owed them something. Later, Beatrice was born. She was planned. She arrived when my parents were already married, more stable, with a house being paid off and a business that was starting to pick up. Took pictures of her, bought her new dresses, and showed her off. I learned to make myself invisible, but I also learned to be useful. In my family, almost no one studied beyond what was necessary. Money was tight and working seemed more urgent than dreaming. I buried myself in books like someone searching for a way out. Every scholarship, every exam, and every good grade was a way of saying, look at me, I'm worth something. When I got a full scholarship to study law, I thought they would finally be proud. They didn't have to pay a cent. Not for registration, not for tuition, nothing. Nothing. One night I heard my mom talking to a neighbor. At least it won't cost us, she said. That's help enough. I was behind the kitchen door. I didn't cry. I just promised myself that someday I would be so good at my job they couldn't ignore me. My parents owned a small local courier and delivery business, 2 vans. Then 3. They delivered documents, spare parts, and orders for businesses in the city. It wasn't a huge business, but it covered their living expenses and let them boast about being independent. The problem was that the administrative side of things felt like a mountain to them. Permits, contracts, fines, renewals, customer complaints, and tax audits, e-audits. Ever since I started studying law, they used me as their free insurance. Just look this over for me, my dad would say. It's just a simple little letter, my mom would say. It'll only take 5 minutes. 5 minutes that turned into hours and weekends that no one paid me for or thanked me for. When I graduated and started working at a firm, the situation got worse. I knew more, earned more, and could draft legal briefs, answer complaints, review contracts, and avoid fines for them. And I did it for years without charging them a cent. I also started sending them $6,000 a month for the mortgage. At first it was temporary, because of a problem with a van. After that, they never stopped needing it. We are tight this month. The business is slow. Your mom is worried. You're the only one who can help us. The only one. They did accept that. When they needed something, I was the only one. When it came time to show off grandchildren, family, and love, I was the second-class daughter. In my 30s, my career started to take off. I was offered an important position at a larger firm with a better salary and room to grow and grow. My parents were more excited than I was, not because they were proud, but because they crunched the numbers. With that salary, you could help us more, my dad said. My mom started talking about fixing the kitchen, paying off a van, and resting more. Then I got pregnant. It wasn't planned. It was a brief relationship, one of those not made to last. Rosa's dad appears from time to time, but he has never been a real presence. My parents told me not to have the baby. Just like that. Don't ruin your life, my mom said. You had finally gotten ahead, my dad said. Don't start over with burdens. Burdens. That word stuck in my mind. But when I knew Rosa was on her way, something changed inside me. For the first time, I didn't feel like my life was a debt. I turned down the big job. I took a job with less pay but more flexible hours. I traded prestige for time. I traded ambition for being present, and I never regretted it. Rosa was the best thing that ever happened to me. My parents, on the other hand, never forgave me for it. To them, I had failed once again. I had chosen my daughter over the chance to earn more money to help them. Over the years, they accepted Rosa at gatherings, but they never looked at her like they looked at Beatrice's children. They celebrated every one of Carlos's poems, every note of Gabriella's, and every song of mine. To Rosa, they would say, "You're so quiet. Why aren't you more like your cousins?" She draws nicely, but that doesn't make any money. I heard it and it hurt, but I kept telling myself that maybe one day they would change, that a good daughter doesn't abandon her parents. Until that birthday, until that sentence, how I wish Beatrice's children were my only grandchildren. That was when I understood that I had learned to endure, but I had no right to teach Rosa to do the same. The following days were a downpour of calls. I didn't answer. My dad left a voicemail with a harsh tone. Monica, this has gone beyond just being angry. If we don't submit those papers, we could be fined. Don't be irresponsible. Irresponsible. I, who had handled their paperwork for over 10 years, my mom, left another one. Your daughter has to learn that in a family, jokes are made. Don't raise her to be so sensitive. I deleted the message. On the fourth day, I replied with a text. You're a lawyer. I'm done. An hour later, my cell phone started ringing again, over and over. The 10th call I answered. What is wrong with you? With you? You can't do this, my mom shouted as soon as I picked up. You can't just cut us off like this overnight. I already did, I said. My dad took the phone. We raised you. I felt a dry laugh get stuck in my throat, and I have been paying for that upbringing for years. I'm done. You are ungrateful, my mom said. I didn't respond. I am her mother, and I've realized that I am not going to let you hurt her. It was a joke. Don't ever call it that again. You are exaggerating. My daughter ended up crying on the floor of your house because her grandmother told her in front of everyone that she preferred her other grandchildren. That is not an exaggeration. My dad took a sharp breath. And because of that, you're going to leave us stranded. I'm not destroying you, I said. I just stopped fixing everything for you. I hung up. That night, Rosa was at the kitchen table drawing. Her brow was furrowed, concentrating. When she finished, she shyly pushed the paper toward me. It was a little girl with a paintbrush in her hand, standing in front of a huge mountain. But the girl was taller than the mountain. Is that you? I asked her. Rosa shook her head. It's me, but braver. I felt my chest tighten. It's beautiful. She shrugged her shoulders. Gabriella has a friend who goes to an art academy. She says they really teach drawing there, but it costs a lot, right? I looked at her drawing and thought about the 6,000 pesos that wouldn't be leaving my account every month. It doesn't cost too much anymore, I told her. She looked up. What? We're gonna go check out that academy. Her eyes widened. Really, truly, the smile that appeared on her face was the first full smile I had seen from her since the birthday. Meanwhile, my parents started their own campaign. According to them, I had changed because I now thought I was better than everyone else. They started telling the family that I had become arrogant, that I was raising a resentful Rosa, and that there was no talking to me because, yes, there was something else they didn't know yet. A few weeks before the birthday, I had been offered a position at a very good firm in Leon with big clients, a better salary, and a more flexible schedule than I could have imagined. It was a second chance, the kind of opportunity I had turned down when Rosa was about to be born. I intended to tell them at my mom's birthday party. I planned to tell them that with that new salary, I could help them pay off the mortgage faster, organize the business, and even plan their retirement if they let themselves be well advised. That's what I was going to say. But my mom spoke first, and what she said changed everything. One morning, my Aunt Teresa called me. Sweetie, she said in a voice of fake concern. Your mom is very sad. She says that since you were offered something better, you feel you're above everyone else. I stayed silent for a second. Did she tell you what she said to Rosa? Silence. Not exactly. She told her, in front of the whole family, that she wished Beatrice's children were her only grandchildren. My aunt didn't respond. Rosa is 9 years old, I added. She went to cry in the hallway with the card she had made her. I heard my aunt breathing on the other end of the line. They didn't tell me that, of course not. After that call, the story started to move on its own. A cousin who almost never talked to me wrote to me. Is what your mom said true? I answered her with the unvarnished truth. Yes. She said it in front of Rosa. Then another cousin, an uncle, and even Beatrice's sister-in-law. Everyone asked the same thing. With that uncomfortable curiosity families have when they smell a scandal, I didn't yell. I didn't exaggerate. I just repeated what had happened. My mom said she wished Beatrice's children were her only grandchildren. My dad didn't correct her. Beatrice didn't either. Rosa left crying. The truth was enough. Some told me I should forgive because parents are parents. Others were indignant. Poor girl, said a cousin. You don't say that to anyone. My parents felt the change immediately. They were no longer the joking grandparents with strong personalities. Now they were the grandparents who had humiliated a child. And in a Mexican family that weighs heavily. The call that finally turned everything around came from a colleague at the firm, Isabel. She knew about the new position because she had helped me review the proposal. She also knew that I planned to tell my parents. When I answered, she sounded nervous. Monica, I think I messed up. What happened? I ran into your parents at Plaza Mayor. They asked about you, and I let it slip about the new job. I thought you had already told them. I closed my eyes. What did you tell them? That I thought they'd be happy because you mentioned helping them with some business matters. Monica, they went pale. I stayed silent. I could imagine them. My mom with her purse in hand, my dad pursing his lips, both understanding what they had lost. They didn't know. I said, I realized that. Sorry. Don't apologize, I replied. From then on, my parents' messages changed. They were no longer demanding. They were begging. My mom wrote, we need to talk. Calmly to talk calmly. Then, we miss Rosa, from my dad. Families make mistakes. We can't break apart over a phrase. After that, Beatrice. Monica, my parents are doing very badly. I'm not saying what happened was right, but you are also being very harsh, very harsh, very harsh, very harsh. I stared at that message with a new sense of calm. For them, the problem wasn't what my mom had said, it was that I had dared to set a boundary. One Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and there were my parents. My mom was carrying a bakery box with a pink cake. It had frosting flowers and a phrase written on top in shaky letters. For our little Rosa, with all our love. My mom smiled too much. We had it made for Rosita, she said, so she can see how much we love her. My dad cleared his throat. We want to fix things. We're family, daughter. I looked at the cake, then looked at them. Rosa isn't here. My mom's smile tightened. You can leave it for her. Or we can wait for her. No, my dad squeezed the box. Monica, we come in peace. You didn't come for Rosa, I said. You came because you heard about the new position. My mom opened her mouth, offended. That's not true. Then tell me one thing. Why do you love her so much now? A few days ago you wished she wasn't your granddaughter. My mom looked down. If she felt bad, that wasn't my intention. She didn't just feel bad. You hurt her. It was just a figure of speech. It wasn't a figure of speech. It was a way to hurt her. My dad tried to play the authority card. That's enough. We are your parents. Yes, I said. And that's why I put up with so much. But Rosa doesn't owe you anything. My mom started to cry, like every time she wanted to shift the blame. Your mom hasn't slept, my dad said. Rosa cannot grow up separated from her grandparents. Rosa's not going to grow up begging for affection in a house where they treat her like that. I replied, we need help with the business, he said, finally, dropping the mask. The paperwork got complicated. The lawyer we saw charges too much and doesn't understand like you do. That's when I realized they hadn't come for Rosa. They came because they needed me. Then pay him, I said. My work was worth something too. Monica, my mom said, now in a low voice, please let us in. No, we just want to see her. Isn't she our granddaughter? Not when it's convenient for you. My dad looked at me with suppressed rage. You're gonna regret this. I regret having put up with so much. I said that I do regret. I closed the door on him. Through the window, I watched them leave with the cake in their hands. Once upon a time, that image would have broken me. I would have opened the door and apologized, even if it wasn't my fault. That day, I didn't. The business didn't fall apart overnight. That would be a lie. Things don't happen like that. But it started to show how fragile it had always been. The problem wasn't one document, it was everything combined. An expired operating license, outdated policies, overdue vehicle registrations, a formal complaint from a major client, and a contract to renew with a local chain pendings that had been pushed aside for months. Before I would have checked everything, organized papers, drafted responses, called whoever needed to be called, and filed documents on time. Without me, my parents did what they always did when something scared them. They put it off until later. First, they went to a lawyer who charged a high consultation fee, and they left terrified. Then they looked for a cheaper one, recommended by an acquaintance, but they brought him incomplete paperwork. They hid previous fines from him, signed without reading, and missed a deadline. The fine arrived first, then 2 trucks were sidelined due to a lack of updated documents. Afterward, the big client canceled the contract. Without that client, their cash flow plummeted. They fell behind with suppliers, missed more deliveries, and without my 6,000 pesos a month, the mortgage became unmanageable. That money didn't pay for the whole house, but it plugged their monthly hole. Besides, they had already been hiding delays for some time. Beatriz, who had always counted on inheriting a functioning business, panicked. Ernesto tried to help, but he soon saw that it wasn't a solid company, but rather deferred problems I had been covering up for years. I found out through relatives, not because I asked. Your dad is trying to sell a truck. Your mom says the bank has already called them. Beatriz is furious with you. It didn't surprise me. To them, the blame was still mine. Not their carelessness, not their dependency, not their cruelty, it was mine, for having stopped cleaning up the mess. Meanwhile, my life began to open up in another direction. I accepted the new position. The first month was difficult. A lot of work, new cases, demanding clients, but there was also respect. Nobody treated me as if my time were free. They paid me for my work, they listened to me, and they challenged me. I felt again that I was good at my job, not just useful to my family. Nah. A few weeks later, I had everything ready. Rosa started at an art academy in the afternoons. It wasn't an impossible luxury, but it had workshops and teachers who knew how to see a child beyond their grades. The first day, Rosa walked by my side clutching her backpack. What if I don't draw well? Then you learn, I told her. That's what you're going for. And if the others are better, then you'll have someone to learn from. She looked at me nervously. And if I make a mistake? I knelt down in front of her. Making a mistake doesn't make you less, Rosa. She stood there thinking. Then she nodded and went in. 3 weeks later, she came running toward me with a sheet of paper in her hand. Mom? She almost tripped from the excitement. They put my drawing on the board. The teacher said I have a lot of imagination. She showed me the page. It was a street in Leon after the rain, with puddles on the pavement and lights reflected like colorful spots. It wasn't perfect, it was alive. I hugged her tight. I am so proud of you. She smiled with her whole face. For the first time in months, she didn't look like a girl trying to make herself small. I also met Hector at that academy. He was the dad of Lilia, a girl Rosa's age who drew fantastic animals. Hector was a widower. At first, we just greeted each other at the entrance. Then the girls became friends. Afterward came the messages to coordinate homework, exhibitions, and supplies. A coffee while we waited for a class, one conversation, then another. Hector didn't fix my life. He just entered it without demanding anything. One day, while the girls were painting in the yard, Hector asked me, "Is it hard for you to let someone help you?" I laughed a little. Is it that obvious, right? A little. I got used to help always coming with a price tag. He didn't say a perfect line. He just nodded. Then let's go slow. And we went slow. At the end of that year, after months of delays they had been dragging, my parents lost the house. It wasn't sudden or because of a single debt. It was because of bank calls, broken promises, and a business that no longer supported them. They sold what they could and rented a small apartment, far from the house where my mom had boasted so many times about Beatriz's grandchildren. The business closed shortly after. Beatrice never spoke to me again. According to her, I had destroyed everyone's stability out of pride. Maybe it suited her to believe that. It was easier to blame me than to accept that for years I had sustained what they didn't want to look at. 1 year after the birthday, Rosa was a different girl. Not perfect, not always confident. She still doubted sometimes, but she didn't hide the same way anymore. She walked through the academy with her head held higher. She talked about shadows, colors, and textures. She had friends. She laughed louder. One afternoon, during an exhibition, I saw one of her drawings hanging on the main wall. It was a woman holding a little girl's hand. Behind them was a house with open windows. In a corner, almost hidden, were 2 small figures walking away with a cake in their hands. I stood staring at it. Rosa approached. Did you like it a lot? It's called The Closed Door. I felt a lump in my throat. It's a good name. My teacher said it feels sad but also strong. I hugged her by the shoulders. Your teacher is right. Hector and Lilia moved in with us a few months later. It wasn't a fairy tale decision. There were conversations, doubts, adjustments, and fear. Rosa and Lilia fought over crayons, the bathroom, and markers without caps. Hector and I learned to argue without hurting each other. When I found myself alone with the baby in my arms, I told myself my family would be Rosa, and that was enough. Yes, it was enough, but now the walls are full of drawings. Hector makes coffee in the mornings, and on Sundays, we eat together without grandchild contests, without comparisons, without children forced to earn anyone's affection. I know little of my parents. My Aunt Teresa told me they are still renting. Dad picks up odd jobs with old clients. My mom hardly goes to family gatherings because she says everyone judges her. Maybe they do. Maybe for the first time people are seeing her without the "she's your mother" filter. Forgive her. Beatrice is still resentful. Her children have grown up and sometimes I wonder if one day they will understand what happened that afternoon. I don't blame them. They were children, repeating the competition the adults taught them, the adults them. But I do blame my parents. Not for losing the business, not for losing the house. I blame them for looking at a girl with a handmade card and making her feel she was unwanted. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if my mom had stayed silent that day. If she had hugged Rosa, if she had said thank you. My love, you sang very beautifully. Maybe I would have announced my new position. Maybe I would have paid off their mortgage faster. Maybe I would have straightened out the business. Maybe my parents would be resting as I planned, but they chose to laugh. They chose a cruel phrase. They chose to bet that I would keep putting up with it because I had always put up with it. Pity. This time I didn't go back. I don't feel proud of their downfall. That would be lying. There were nights when it hurt and I almost called. Not because they deserved it, but because a part of me still wanted to have parents. But then I would see Rosa sleeping peacefully. I would see her drawings taped to the wall and remember why I closed that door. My mom said she wished other children were her only grandchildren. I decided that my daughter would never again have to beg for a place in a family that didn't know how to love her. That is why I didn't open the door.